Do you have a scary, strange, or otherwise unexplained horror story you'd like to send into the channel? Just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And as always, thank you. This happened to me back in about 2015. I worked as a project manager for a medium-sized company in the Midwest. As a project manager, I had to go to a lot of conferences and a lot of conventions, which meant I also traveled a lot. However, I've never been big on flying, so I drove when I could if possible, or I took a train, and flying would be my last resort. Thankfully, the company I worked for was very understanding and paid for gas and mileage. In the late spring of that year, I had a large convention I had to go to on the West Coast. The plan was to drive, and being a single woman, I was going to be alone, which also wasn't anything new for me. The drive to my hotel was uneventful, which wasn't a problem. I'm the type that can drive really far without having to stop. It's probably not good, but I get tunnel vision and have a goal in mind, and I'm dedicated. Like I said, project manager. Anyways, I arrived at the hotel, got checked in, and met up with a few coworkers for drinks that night. The convention was 2.5 days long, and I was expected to attend at least the first 2 days. The last day was optional. But this isn't necessarily about the convention either. Again, that was the same as all the others I'd gone to. The second evening of the convention, I was packing up my stuff to bring it back to my room, and one of my coworkers helped carry it back. After he left, I wanted to have a quiet dinner by myself before I went back home the next day. I'd been talking to a friend of mine about the trip because he used to live in the state, and he suggested that I try out this little restaurant that was called something like Pablo's. I remembered him mentioning it, so after changing into something a little more casual, I headed out to my car to check it out. However, once I got to my car, I realized I left my phone on the charger and made my way back up to the room to grab it. I exited the elevator and started walking down the hall when I saw a man with his hand on a door handle, about to enter a room. At first, it wasn't important, as it just appeared that he was entering his own room or maybe waiting on someone to open the door for him that he was with. The problem with this was, as I got closer, I realized he was trying the door handle to my room. He was in normal clothes, like jeans and a t-shirt, as in he wasn't wearing a housekeeping uniform or even a hotel shirt that I saw the other employees wearing. He also didn't appear drunk, either, like he was just lost or confused. So why was he trying to enter my room? I stopped by the door next to my room and just asked, "Hi, that's my room. Can I help you with something?" He slowly turned to look at me and said, "You're a long way from Chicago, eh? It can be pretty dangerous traveling alone around here." It was definitely unexpected for him to call out Chicago specifically, because that was where I was from. But there was a large convention with a lot of people. It was entirely possible he overheard me mention Chicago to someone else. I know that I didn't speak with him directly because I'm very good at remembering faces. I had not seen that man at all these last 2 days. So I just made a joke that this place was pretty tame compared to Chicago. He did not chuckle, he did not smirk, nor smile. Nothing. So, I just tried to say excuse me while holding out my card so that I could get into my room. He backed away from the door, so I got as close as possible, inserted my card, and tried to slip in without giving him much space. He didn't try to get into my room, but he did try to stop me when he spoke again. "Whatever you do tonight, Missy, don't go to Pablo's." He then nodded and started walking away towards the elevators. I went to my room and sat on the chair for several minutes trying to digest what had just happened. My name is Melissa, but people do call me Missy. Again, he could have been at the convention and heard me or someone else say it, or he could have just also been saying it as a non-formal version of Ms. or Ms. And just completely coincidentally said Missy. I could rationalize those, but what I couldn't explain, however, was the comment about Pablo's. I had the conversation about it with my friend before I even left for this trip. I also had not mentioned it to anyone at the convention that I was going to be going there, as I had not decided on it yet. So why would he bring it up specifically? Why would he bring up Pablo's? After that interaction, I was not comfortable going anywhere that night, and I was not going to tell my coworkers that some random guy in the hotel spooked me. So, I ordered some room service and tried to just forget about the whole thing. The next morning, I got all my stuff packed into my car and checked out of my hotel. I went to the convention, but more so as a visitor so I could walk around and enjoy everyone else's hard work, putting the night prior's events in the past. After a few hours, I wanted to get on the road so I could stick to my schedule. I got into my car, set up my GPS, and looked both ways, preparing to pull out of the parking garage. But to my right, I saw the same guy from that night standing near a pole. We made eye contact, and again, without as much as a smile, he nodded at me and then walked off. It gave me goosebumps. Something was just off about him. Again, my drive home went fine and life was continuing as normal. As I normally do when I go on these trips, I usually take the next 2 days off to try and recuperate, do things I need to do around the house, and just have some time to decompress after socializing so much. During this time, my friend that I mentioned earlier came over to have dinner with me. I was telling him about the trip when he gasped and asked me, "Oh, did you get to check out Pablo's?" That's when I remembered the weird guy. I told him that I hadn't and explained how I had intentions on going, but that the guy stopped me. That's when his eyes widened, and he said how crazy that was, because after confirming the news and dates, Pablo's had a kitchen fire, and something actually blew up in the back, injuring a handful of employees and a few customers. It happened the same night that I was planning on going. Did the fire have anything to do with what that guy meant? Again, I can put the name and Chicago thing aside, but the fact that he called out Pablo's and that there happened to be a fire there, something was bizarre about that. But the fire was also determined to have been started by one of the employees that night. It was accidental. Something was too close to the stove or something. I don't quite remember the details, so I can't even say it was arson and that the guy planned it. So how did he know? My friend and I had a bit of a freakout session thinking about it, but afterwards that was pretty much it. There was no way we would ever get answers or probably ever meet this guy again to ask. But I guess all I can say is thank you. He may have saved me from injuries and possible mental trauma from witnessing everything. So, this event started happening to me a few weeks ago. I work in construction, and I'm not really an outgoing person, so my idea of a good Friday night is sitting at home, ordering something for dinner and picking something up, and just binging something on TV until I passed out. I might go see some friends or do something over the weekend, but Friday was usually my day to just be left alone and relax. On one of those nights, I was eating when I received a call from an area code I didn't recognize, Oklahoma. I live in Tennessee, and it said, "Scam likely." I like to waste their time, so I answered, but they didn't say anything and eventually hung up. So they were probably just confirming that this was a live number. Whatever. But then they called back. Same number, about an hour later. That time I answered again and didn't get a response, so I asked, "Is anyone gonna talk? Or are we just gonna sit here again?" This time, I heard someone laughing and they hung up. I was a little confused there. Was this really a scammer? Because if so, what was the point? Could it have just been a prank call? Again, they're not really good because the number showed up. Granted, it could have been spoofed too, I suppose. But I also didn't get another call from them, so I let it go. The next week, I was on my couch doing the same thing that I usually do. This time I had leftovers, so I didn't even have to go anywhere. Then I got another call. This time it was Scam Likely coming out of Texas. I once again answered, and this time they asked if Country Boy was there, using my real name, of course. I confirmed and they said, "Cool," and then hung up. Again, it was weird, but I just went about my night. But the number called again. I answered it, and that time they again sat silently. A little annoyed, I asked them, "So you confirmed it was me. You obviously wanted to talk, so let's talk." The person again laughed and hung up. No more calls that night, so someone was obviously trying to prank me. I don't know who or why, but I could move past it. I just didn't have to answer the calls. But then, last week, I got another call. This time it was restricted. I was not going to entertain it, so I just didn't answer. I just kept on enjoying my night. 7 times they called. It was back to back. I even put my phone on silent so it wouldn't keep vibrating, hoping that it would be less distracting. But then I got a text from a number that I didn't recognize, and all it said was, "Answer the phone." Still annoyed but wanting this nonsense to end, I answered. "What do you want?" I said, annoyed. "I can see you," the person said back in a teasing manner. This voice was different from the previous calls that I got. This person sounded like a woman. Again, I took it as a prank. I was alone in my apartment that was on the 2nd floor, so no one could obviously see me. So I just played along. "Yep, sure you can." "I see you, sitting on your couch, with your sandwich and beer." I was, in fact, doing just that. But big deal. Good guess, I thought to myself. Generic food item, generic drink, right? Then they said, "Also, those boxers are not flattering," and laughed. Again, I was sitting in my boxers. I was home alone, still weird, but I wasn't going to start freaking out. I just told them not to call back and hung up. I mumbled something, calling them a name, and tried to forget about it, but they then sent a text that said, "I'm not an asshole." That's what I had said under my breath before hanging up. That got me thinking. How the hell did they know what I said? I could say maybe a good guess on the other things, even though the boxer comments did kind of throw me off. But how did they know what I had said? I just sat on my couch, not really knowing how to take all this. Why was this all happening right now, and why me? Neither of the voices sounded familiar to me. I didn't know anyone in Oklahoma nor Texas. And the number that texted me, after looking it up, it was one of those internet phone numbers. I couldn't find anyone tied to it. I tried calling it, but it said that it didn't accept phone calls, so I was at a loss. But then, the number called back, and I wanted answers, so I answered. I tried to keep up the bravado, to not let them think I was interested in their game, but I think that started to quickly fall. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to talk." "Oh, and you're almost out of dog food. Don't make Penny mad." Now I was kind of freaked out. I do have a dog named Penny, and she was running low on food. I was actually going to stop to get more on my way home from work that day, but I had forgotten. I told them not to call back anymore, and I hung up. Unfortunately, the number was restricted, so I couldn't even block it. I again sat in my living room for a while before I finally decided to call the only person I could even think about pulling something like this: my ex. Our split was amicable. We were pretty different people, and while we thought it would work at first, we realized it wasn't going to. We stayed decent friends, though. We were together for about a year, so I knew her voice, and I knew the caller wasn't her. I also know that she had no reason to really prank me like this because there was no resentment, no anger. But I also know that she had a key to my place, she knew my dog, and sometimes she also enjoyed a Friday night in with me, so she knew what I did. But when I called her, the background was really loud, so I knew that she was at work. She was a bartender. I told her about what was happening, and I recognized the sincerity and genuine confusion in her voice. It only confirmed that it wasn't her. I even asked if she gave out my number to anyone, and told anyone about my dog, or anything, to someone that would try and mess with me, and again, she sounded genuine when she said it. I let her go and continued on with my confusing and frustrating night. But they apparently were not done with me. I got one more text that just said, "knock knock." I ignored it until I got 2 more texts with the same thing. I wasn't going to entertain it anymore, so I ignored it and tried to play a game on my Xbox. But then there was a real knock on my door. I kept the game going, trying to keep the noise on, and slowly approached the door to look out the hole. There was no one there. I slowly unlocked the door and flung it open and just saw a small box at my door. Like hell was I going to open it. I left it there, locked the door again, and continued playing my game. It started to eat at me though, because, like most people would, I wanted to know what it was. But I was also worried that something dangerous could be in it. I didn't want to call the police. I didn't want to waste their time on me, whining about a prank call and a suspicious package. But then I thought about all of the other people in this building, and then realized how selfish this could be. So I called the police. I told them about the calls and the suspicious package at my door, and they said they would come right over. I waited for some time until I started hearing footsteps outside my door, so I got up to check. I saw the cops, so I opened the door to them talking to each other, but when I opened the door, at their feet was the box. But now it was sitting open, with a single bag of dog food in this box. One of the cops had a smirk on his face, like he thought the whole thing was funny. I reiterated what happened and explained that the box was closed. That's why I called them. However, they said that it was open when they arrived. Did someone really come back in that short amount of time to open the box? For what? To prove that it was harmless? I was irritated at this point, and when they asked me if I wanted it, I said no and told them to throw it in the dumpster out front. It matched the exact food that I got for Penny. I bought an expensive senior-specific food for her due to her age and some health issues, one that I got from a specific store. So how would they know? But I also wasn't willing to risk her life to feed her that bag in case it had been tampered with. After that, I went to bed, fed up and angry. I didn't get another call or text either. The next day, I looked into the numbers that called me and came to a dead end pretty quickly, as they were both internet numbers too. Traced to no one, so there was no way that I would ever get an answer to this. But I did buy a camera to put on my door. It's technically against my apartment lease, but at this point, I really don't give a damn. I was mad. I was freaked out, and I wanted to catch the asshole if they tried to do it again. Now, all I have to do is figure out how to check my place for possible hidden cameras, but the thought of even doing that makes me feel insane. And maybe that's what they were going for. But I'm honestly at a loss at this point. I just want to feel comfortable in my own place again, and until that happens, I guess that I just get to be paranoid. A few years back, my friend got a house for a steal. I have dual citizenship. I'm American, but I live abroad. This took place in that country. And the reason the house was so cheap was because it was all but ready to be bulldozed. It needed a lot of work, and he was good at fixing things up himself, so he wanted to challenge himself. Me and a few of our friends agreed to help him out, though, and we made a bit of a trip out of it. We brought sleeping bags and tents, as it was a distance for a few of us to get to, and camped out in his backyard. There were 4 of us total, including the homeowner that started working on this. We started working on some of the minor things to get them out of the way first, but then we noticed a pretty bad-looking spot in the ceiling. However, based on the house, there was an attic, so I knew we needed to check it out too, instead of going straight to the roof. We searched for a bit to find the entry to the attic, which you would think would be pretty easy. Except it had been painted over, so we missed it a few times. Once we found it, we scraped away the paint, only to realize it was plastered over too. We removed all of that, knowing that the ceilings needed some attention anyways, but then we couldn't even access the drop-down ladder because it had been nailed shut. There was a thin board going across it too. So we ripped all of that out, and joked about why someone would go through all of this effort to close off an attic. Finally, we got through, and we were able to get the door open and the ladder down. Once we got up there, we could see that it definitely hadn't been touched in many years. There were a few inches of dust on everything. There was no light in the attic, not even a small window, so we had to grab a few torches and even ran an extension cord up there for a lamp. But looking around got us curious. It was almost as if someone was living up there. There was a very thin mat on the floor, like a yoga mat, with a small quilted blanket tossed over it. The mat was once white, or maybe a light gray, but was now brown or yellow stained. There was a small tray that had 2 plates stacked on it that were dirty. Flakes of food or something were on it. There was also a wooden cup that had some pens and pencils in it. Lastly, there were a few boxes shoved in the far back corner, being covered by what looked like an old sheet or tablecloth. One of the boxes made me think whoever used to live there was an artist. Charcoal and pastels were seemingly just tossed in the top of the box. There were several sketch pads filled with pictures that were quite, honestly, disturbing. There were pictures of women screaming, portraits of them all looking terrified, like looking over their shoulder. Some with their knees to their chest and head down, all of them nude. There was also a box of photos with similar themes. Both men and women were in these pictures. All nude, all screaming. Lying on the ground, bound. Some of them looked even like they were asleep, or, God forbid, dead. It was very unsettling. Then the third box was filled to the brim with loose papers. Napkins, strips of fabric, all of them written on. Some of them even read like a diary entry. Others were just ramblings. Ramblings of a mad person, to be honest. It was creepy. I know there are a lot of different kinds of artists. It was entirely possible that all these people posed as such to capture that style, but it just seemed so raw and genuine that it spooked me. Not to mention, the writings portrayed a person that was slowly going insane. Part of me wanted to go through the writings and put them in order. Most of them had dates on it, but I feel like the crazier sounding pieces did not. And I wondered if that meant anything. My friend said that he knew nothing of any crimes happening in the house, but said normally he would just toss everything into the garbage. But I convinced him to let me take it to the authorities to at least see if they may have any idea, if it could help them at all. Or maybe even they could recognize some of the people from past events. So, we cleared out the attic, found a spot where the roof was leaking and rotted through the attic and got it fixed up too. It was a lot of work, and of course took longer than the weekend, but it was worth it. It looks quite nice nowadays. However, I did take that stuff to the police. They thanked me for the info and said that they would follow up with me or my buddy if they had any more questions. To this day, neither of us ever heard back, so I'm not sure if that means anything. Regardless, we still don't have answers to what we found that day. Was someone living there? Was someone forced to live there, based on the locked-up attic? Or maybe they did that to prevent someone from finding their belongings. And was it all just an art project? Or was there something more sinister happening in that house? I hope that it was all just art, and everyone came out of it okay, but like I said, something about the writings and those pictures together did not bode well. But I just hope that I'm wrong. This happened to me and my family back when I was about 8. I'm 19 now, and it's still something that we bring up on occasion because we still have no explanation. My parents owned some property down in Florida, so we often went there on vacations. As a kid, it was always exciting because it was away from home. We were allowed to go swimming basically any time that we wanted because of how close we were to the beach. My parents also hardly worked while we were there, so it was nice to actually spend time with them. The place that they owned was part of a small neighborhood. All the houses looked the exact same, and the road went in an almost U shape. Surrounding the block was also a walking trail, so we often saw people walking and jogging, or even walking their dogs along it. Sometimes my two older brothers and I would race on the section in the back of the house. So, on this particular summer, we went down there and were playing in the tiny backyard. I don't remember what the game really entailed, something we all just made up, I'm sure, but then I saw a guy that was walking the path. At the time, he just looked over at us and kept walking. So the experience was insignificant. But what made it then stand out for me was that shortly later, I saw the same guy walking in the opposite direction, back towards us. The path looped, so it was unusual to see someone walking it and turn around, instead of looping around. It wasn't uncommon, and I'm sure some people just walked sections of the path, so it stood out to me. But it certainly wasn't suspicious to my little self. What I did find odd, though, was when he stopped on the path behind our place. There was no fence, so he could have just walked right up to us if he wanted to. But he didn't. He just stood there on the path, both hands in the pocket of his jacket, which was odd since it was the middle of summer in Florida, and he stared at us. I tried to ignore it at first, but I was also a pretty shy kid, especially around adults that I didn't know. But after several long minutes of him watching us, I pointed him out to my brothers, and they both looked over at him too. Now, with 3 kids looking at him, he continued to stare back. No smile, no wave, didn't say hi, nothing. My brothers said that we should just go inside, so that's what we did. They mentioned the guy to my parents, but when they looked out the back door and didn't see him, they just shrugged it off and said he was probably just walking and stopped to watch us play. Sure, it could have been innocent, but now, as an adult myself, a grown man watching us play was not right with me. A few days later, I hadn't been feeling good. I had a stomach bug or something, so I wasn't feeling like going anywhere. My dad wanted to go on some alligator boat ride and fishing, but since I wasn't feeling well, he took my brothers, while my mom and I stayed home. Other than the being sick part, it was at least a nice girls' day in for us. We watched movies, worked puzzles together, and ate junk food. I was on the couch that was against the wall, the same wall the front door was on, and there was a window above the couch. My mom was sitting in her chair, which was opposite of me, with the coffee table in between us. I was half awake, half focused on the movie when out of nowhere, my mom screamed, startling me. She jumped up and raced to the front door, locking the door and the deadbolt. Confused and frightened, I looked out the window to see what she saw. The man on the path from the other day was now on our little patio, pacing back and forth. He looked up a few times at me, and I could see his mouth moving. I could tell he was talking, but I couldn't quite make out what he was saying. I was scared. He weirded me out before, but the fact that he was now so close to our home while my mom and I were alone terrified me. My mom shouted at me to shut the curtains while she grabbed her phone to call my dad. I heard her talking to him about it. I told her it was the same guy from the other day. They continued to talk, my mom explaining what the guy was doing. I don't know why they didn't call the cops, to be honest, but my mom would just shout over me to stay out of the window while also trying to keep me calm. I was scared, but I kept trying to look at the guy to see what he was doing. He was progressively getting louder and maybe angrier because he would slam his fist into his face and then look like he was screaming at the world. My parents hardly ever fought. If they did, it was pretty tame. Maybe a few annoyed words, but they always kept their cool around us kids. This was probably one of the first times I'd actually seen an adult so angry, so it terrified me even more. Thankfully, my dad had decided to go fishing first, so they weren't that far away, versus if they would have gone on the boat ride first. Maybe that's why my mom decided to wait on my dad instead of calling the cops. I don't know. After what felt like forever, I heard someone shouting and looked out the window again to see my dad approaching this guy. Again, I had never seen my dad the way he was that day. He was terrifying. He was not a small man, but I never saw him as anything close to scary. My dad approached the man, and he was already red from the sun, covered in mud and grass, and he looked pissed. He started shouting at him, and the guy said something a lot quieter. From there was a small scuffle, my dad wrestling the guy to the ground. My mom opened the door and started shouting too, and I started crying. My dad then told my mom to call the police as he stayed on the guy's back, holding him down. My brothers were in the Jeep the whole time and finally came into the house through the back door. I still wanted to know what was happening, so with both of my parents outside with the doors closed, I cracked the window open. I probably should have listened to my mom and stayed away. I heard the man's rambling. He kept saying the same thing over and over again. He said that he came for me. He said he needed to save the little girl, that I was chosen, and that I had a bigger purpose in life. As children do, I immediately blamed myself. He was here because of me? For me? He had scared my mom, brought out this angry man in my dad. He ruined our vacation because of me. That was the day that I realized the dangers of the world, my sense of security and innocence being torn out of my head. I saw how dangerous people can be, even if they looked fairly normal. We still don't know what his intentions were and what he meant by it all, but It terrified me. The cops arrested the man, but I still don't have any answers. Maybe my parents know more, but just didn't want to tell me. To try and keep that sense of childhood innocence, I'm really not sure, but honestly, I don't want to ask. I'd rather just leave it where it is, and know that everyone's intentions may not be pure. Okay. I've decided to share my dream about being Diana on the night that she died. I'm tired of keeping this to myself, and the people I've told don't believe me. Close family and friends. I wanted to share this because I'm seeing magazines talking about Princess Diana again, and how the paparazzi led to her death. I was there with her, but her at the same time. Look, I know that sounds ridiculous, and maybe my young brain had ultra-high imagination, but I woke up to hear two sad things from my sister Carrie the next morning. One, that our cat Kino died last night in the cat litter box, curled up into it. I cried instantly. Two, Princess Diana died. I loved her so much. I cried for her too and thought about my dream. It was as real as if I was in the limousine in Paris, but she/I wore the blue sapphire dress, not the black suit. At least, what I could remember. The night the Princess Diana died, she wore a black suit outfit. I awoke in the body of Princess Diana. I knew that it wasn't my body. I looked at my hands. They were elegant hands, but I had long fingers. Then I had the thought, these are not my hands. I'm a short person. I'm in a tall person's body. My eyes fell onto my lap. It was a dark sapphire blue dress. I had a pearl necklace too, and I had short hair. I was in an extravagant vehicle on the passenger right side. When I saw which side Princess Di was in the vehicle on that horrible night, I was shocked. I can still remember touching the softness of the velvet in the back seat. I never felt anything so soft. It was nighttime, so I couldn't see much outside my window, and I had a kind of tunnel vision. I remember a man was beside Princess Di, me, in a suit on the left side of the vehicle. No one was in the middle seat. Things happened fast. I hear a voice of high annoyance. I can't remember if it was the driver who said it or the unknown man beside Diana. I assume it was her boyfriend. I remember the orange streetlights. I remember responding to the voice to turn to say something, but I can't remember what. I was turning to look behind us from the moving black limousine. A man wearing a white helmet and driving a scooter type of bike. It was a gas scooter was following the limousine. It was dark and I couldn't see his face from the helmet, but I knew it was a man. And he was getting closer. What I remember most about the figure was the bright round headlamp at the front of the scooter. It was blindingly bright. It created an even darker shadow around him. The men's voices in the car were getting high-stressed. Princess Diana was quiet. I felt her annoyance with the paparazzi. This was not the first time she was followed by them, but I felt fear from her too. The man on the scooter, broad back and thick thighs, was driving very close to the rear of the car. I felt a sudden panic. The men with her/me shouted. Then, all I remember is the scooter's round, 8-inch diameter headlamp burst into a brilliant bright beam of light inside the back window, blinding all of us inside the limo. And then blackness. I slowly opened my eyes, still in my dream. My sister came in my room. This was the same house where I had the stairs scene, and she told me the sad news that our 5-year-old cat died, and she found out by the news that Princess Diana died last night. So, I think about my dream whenever I see the paparazzi blaster, still, photos, stories, and details about Princess Diana. or even images and talks about her 2 boys. She didn't have the time to think about the people in her life. It really seemed like it was over in a flash. Princess Di was murdered. I wonder if I should tell someone of authority who are conducting the investigations, but would they take me seriously? Hell no. Kind regards, Crista Thompson. So that, my friends, was a collection of some truly strange and bizarre unexplained horror stories. Stories that, well, are unexplained. That's what it says on the label. I don't lie when I make the label. It's like a can of soup. If it says chicken noodle, it's got chickens and noodles. Anyways, scary unexplained stories. I like doing these, just a collection of stories that are strange, bizarre, and can't really be explained in any way, shape, or form. You can always have theories, sure, but they're still bizarre. I do enjoy doing these, because they are very weird stories, finding these ones and getting them submitted to me, and finally getting them all collected into a video. So yeah, good stuff, good unexplained scary stuff, and so forth and so on. Hopefully you all enjoyed them. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. I would greatly appreciate it. If you happen to be new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing, as it helps tremendously. You can also go down below the video to the comment section and leave me a comment, letting me know your thoughts, how you're doing, how your day's gone, how you're feeling. If you've ever had anything weird and unexplained like this happen to you. Of course, if you want to send something like that in to me, you can go to astheravendreams.com and click the button in the middle of the screen that says Submit Your Story. From there, I get it, I read it, we move forward, things are happy. You can also join Patreon membership to get early access to content like this. Again, never expected, always appreciated. Or just do a super chat, super thanks to the channel in this case, which is just a little tip to the channel, just a support. Never expected, but, you know, it helps. So, of course, the best thing you can always do to support the channel is listen, like, comment if you feel like you can. Don't have to, no expectations. And share the video if you have people that you know that like stories like this. If you have friends that like to listen to narration videos, maybe send them my channel. Let them know. And then tell them to say, hey, this person sent me, and I will thank you in a comment and say, hey, that's awesome, and say hi, and welcome to the channel, and, you know, greet them appropriately. Yeah. All that said, friends, hope you're having a beautiful weekend. Hope you're having a beautiful week so far, and hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important. You're the best you that you can be. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, and please do not forget it. And until I see you again, my friends, much love, and sleep well.